Recently, India and UAE have agreed to start a local currency settlement system which would enable the use of local currencies for settling cross-border transactions between the two countries. This would allow the exporters and importers in both the countries to invoice in their respective currencies, thus bypassing the use of the US dollar. This is part of a concerted policy effort by India to reduce the demand for US dollar and increase the use of Indian rupee for cross-border transactions as a means to insulate the Indian economy from global shocks. Now let's see how the use of local currency for settling transactions happens in practice. This would make use of an agent, which is the correspondent bank. This would serve as an agent for a foreign bank in the domestic country. For instance, let's take the Federal Bank as an example of a correspondent bank for a bank in UAE. The Indian exporters would invoice in Indian rupees, while the UAE exporter will invoice in UAE dirham. But while making the payment, Indian importers will be paying in Indian rupees to the correspondent bank account in India, which is used to pay the Indian exporters. A similar case happens with UAE dirham in UAE. Now let's come back to the bigger challenge, which is the internationalization of Indian rupee. What exactly is internationalization of a currency? It involves the use of a national currency for settling transactions between residents and non-residents for cross-border transactions. Any international currency should perform three roles. That is, it should be a unit of account for trade invoicing, it should be a medium of exchange for settling international transactions, and also it should be a store of value which can serve as a foreign currency reserve for different countries. Currently, it is the US dollar, which is the world's most prominent international currency. It accounts for close to 88% of the global trade, while Indian rupee accounts for hardly 1.7%. Now, the reasons why the US dollar enjoys this exorbitant privilege as the world's international currency are mainly due to the size of the US economy, its use in global trade and financial networks, and a history of macroeconomic stability and currency convertibility. It is to contribute to the de-dollarization of the global economy and to promote the use of Indian rupee as an international currency that RBI has recently come up with the Interdepartmental Group's report on internationalization of the Indian rupee. According to this report, the RBI panel has offered several short-term, medium-term and long-term recommendations to promote the rupee's international use. The short-term recommendations include several trade agreements with other countries, starting rupee settlement in existing mechanisms, and opening rupee accounts for non-residents. The medium-term recommendations include reviewing taxes on masala bonds, use of real-time gross settlement for cross-border transactions, and reviewing the taxation system in financial markets. The long-term recommendation is to pursue the inclusion of Indian rupee in the SDR basket of the International Monetary Fund. Now, why is there an increasing focus on internationalization of the rupee right now? This is because currently India has a lot of strong linkages with the global economy, and India is a strong member in the global trade alliances. Now, there are various reasons for a strong focus on internationalization in the present context. Let us take a look at each of them. The Indian economy is enjoying increasing linkages with the global economy, and with increasing FDI into India and the rise of foreign exchange reserves, the Indian rupee has become an attractive currency for international use. The other reasons relate to India's net importer status, with India's imports exceeding that of exports in value. India also has a very huge trade deficit of over $22 billion. This also ensures that India needs to focus heavily on de-dollarization. There is also a trend of the declining share of dollar, with the international monetary system becoming more multipolar. This has also further increased with geopolitical considerations due to the sanctions imposed on Russia, with the global interest on an alternative to the US dollar increasing. Despite various benefits, the path towards internationalization is fraught with challenges. Internationalization of the rupee may initially lead to exchange rate volatility, which would be a challenge for the monetary policy of the country. The flow of funds in and out of the country can also lead to amplification of external shocks. Also, the rupee's low global demand, the limits on capital account convertibility, and a low share in the trade volume would limit the other countries' need to hold Indian rupees as reserves. Thus, we can conclude that though the current focus on internationalization is welcome, it is essential that we pursue a slow, calibrated approach to reduce the risk of any negative offshoots that may arise. Thank you.
Amrita IAS Academy.